It was almost midnight, the kind of hour when the streets whisper and the world forgets to make noise. And in that silence, she stood, a woman alone at the edge of a dimly lit parking lot, one hand gripping the handle of a suitcase. But this wasn't an airport. No train, no bus in sight, just a suitcase in the middle of nowhere. She wasn't running away. She wasn't going anywhere at all. She had dragged that suitcase from her apartment across 6 blocks without a plan. Inside, nothing but old notebooks, photographs, letters she never sent, things that didn't belong to her future, but she kept carrying anyway. If you had seen her that night, you might have thought she looked lost, but the truth, she was just tired. Tired of carrying things no one else could see. And isn't that something we all do? We lug around invisible suitcases, stuffed with regrets, unspoken words, memories we replay like broken records, hoping this time, maybe they'll end differently. But they never do. No one teaches us how to let go. We're told to move on, forgive, get over it. But they never say what to do with the weight itself. The guilt, the fear, the pain that clings like wet clothes. That night, she didn't throw the suitcase away. She just sat beside it for hours. And somehow, in that stillness, a question started to form. Not why it hurts, not who made it worse, but what if I don't have to carry this anymore? Some ghosts don't haunt us by slamming doors. They whisper through birthday songs. They flash behind innocent smiles. They return in silence when no one's watching. Because the past doesn't knock. It just walks in, uninvited. You see, memory isn't a library. It doesn't file events neatly into shelves we never revisit. It's more like a suitcase you never really unpack, even if you think you've moved on. That mistake you made 5 years ago, still zipped inside. That one cruel sentence someone said when you were 13, tucked into a side pocket, still echoing. And the worst part, most of us don't realize how heavy it's become. We carry it into job interviews, into relationships, into how we talk to ourselves in the mirror. Take David, for example. He's 34, works in tech. Funny, thoughtful, seems like he's got it all together. But every time he gets feedback from a boss, even gentle feedback, he shuts down. Not because he's sensitive, but because when he was 10, his father only spoke up to point out what he did wrong. So today, adult David is still reacting, not to the email in front of him, but to a voice from decades ago. His memory packed that old hurt and never told him where he'd stored it. Here's the thing. It's not weakness to be affected by the past. It's human. But it becomes dangerous when we mistake memory for truth. When we assume, this is who I am, instead of this is where I've been. Because your past is a place you visited, not a person you're doomed to remain. And here's where things get powerful. If we can recognize what we've been carrying, maybe, just maybe, we can learn to unpack it. But first, we have to stop lying to ourselves. Let's talk about that next. You can look perfectly fine and still be bleeding on the inside. Not all pain shows up in bruises. Some wounds wear suits. Others smile wide at dinner parties. And some hide so well, even you forget they're there. Until they speak. In the way you flinch when someone gets too close. In the way you always need to prove yourself. In the way you say, I'm just tired, when really, you are quietly drowning. Emotional pain doesn't always scream. Most of the time it whispers, through patterns. We become experts at coping, but amateurs at healing. You grow up in chaos, you might crave control. You were never heard, you talk loud or barely talk at all. You were betrayed, you call it independence, when really, you just stopped trusting. And yet, so often, we don't connect the dots. We say, I'm just built this way. But maybe we're not built. We're shaped. Shaped by what we've survived and by the parts of us we've silenced to survive. Let's talk about Carla. On paper, she's impressive. A manager at 29, always on top of deadlines, always together. But she panics when she gets one message, "Can we talk?" No exclamation point, no smiley, just, "Can we talk?" Suddenly, her hands sweat. Her chest tightens, not because of the message, but because growing up, every time she heard those words, they came before something awful, a punishment, a breakup, a loss. Now she's 29, and her nervous system still reacts like she's 9. That's what unprocessed pain does. It hides in your body and waits. Pain that isn't transformed gets transmitted. We pass it on in sharp tones, distant hugs, unfinished apologies. We live out old scripts in new scenes, and worst of all, we think it's normal. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's the beginning of healing. Not fixing, not erasing, just understanding. And sometimes understanding is enough to loosen the grip. But here's the thing. There's one lie almost all of us have told, to the world, to our friends, and especially to ourselves. I'm fine. Let's take a closer look at that next. There's a moment, quiet, unassuming, when the story you've been telling yourself cracks. It might happen in a mirror, in a voice memo you didn't mean to replay, in someone's eyes when they say, "You don't seem happy." And suddenly, your life, your choices, your masks, all line up, and none of them feel like you anymore. We all wear identities we didn't exactly choose. The achiever, the fixer, the peacemaker, the strong one. At some point, those roles kept us safe. But what happens when they become cages? Self-awareness isn't a sudden download. It's subtle, a flicker of discomfort, a pattern you can't unsee. It's the moment you realize you've been performing, not living. But awareness is powerful, because once you see yourself, really see yourself, you can never go back to pretending. Elena was always the strong one. She handled everything, her siblings' chaos, her parents' silence, her own heartbreaks. At 34, she had a thriving career, but couldn't remember the last time she cried or laughed without watching herself. One morning, she caught her reflection, still in yesterday's makeup, eyes tired, and for a split second, she didn't recognize the woman looking back. That was her moment, not dramatic, not loud, but piercing. Later that day, she canceled a meeting and walked for hours, not away from something, but toward herself, the self she'd buried under everyone else's expectations. That walk was the first honest thing she'd done in years. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is admit you're tired of pretending. Awareness isn't clarity. It's just the first flashlight in a dark room. It shows you what's real and gives you a choice. Stay in the pattern or start rewriting the script. Elena's mirror moment wasn't magic, but it was a beginning. And beginnings, as fragile as they seem, hold the seed of transformation. So how do we move forward once we finally see the truth? Let's explore that next. We celebrate the ones who hold on, who endure, who never give up. But what if What if the strength we admire is sometimes just fear in disguise? Because sometimes what we call bravery is really just the inability to let go. We've been taught that persistence is noble, that walking away is weakness, that releasing something means we failed. But here's the truth. Holding on to pain, to toxic relationships, to worn-out dreams doesn't make us brave. It makes us stuck. Why? Because letting go means confronting emptiness. It means admitting that effort alone doesn't always fix things. And most of us would rather cling to the known suffering than face the terrifying freedom of the unknown. The illusion of strength is seductive, but it's just that, an illusion. Malik was the kind of person who never gave up. He stayed in a job that drained him, a city that never felt like home, and a relationship that stopped feeling like love years ago. His friends said he was committed. His parents said, "You're doing the right thing." But late at night, Malik felt it, that quiet ache that whispered, "You're holding on to something that's holding you back." It took a panic attack in a supermarket, surrounded by cereal boxes and strangers, for him to finally exhale and say, "I can't do this anymore." That wasn't weakness. That was clarity. That was strength, finally showing up. Real strength isn't about gripping tighter. It's about knowing when to loosen the grip. Sometimes the most courageous act is surrender. Not because you've lost, but because you've outgrown the fight. So if letting go isn't weakness, then what happens when we finally release? When we step out of the illusion and make space for something new? Let's talk about what true release looks like and what it demands of us. Letting go isn't loud. It's not fireworks or fists in the air. It's quiet, soft, like unclenching a fist you didn't realize had been gripping for years. And in that release, you don't lose yourself. You finally return to you. The art of letting go is not about giving up. It's about consciously choosing what no longer fits your soul. It's scanning your life and gently asking, what am I still carrying that no longer belongs to me? This could be the memory of who you used to be, the pressure to live a life someone else imagined for you, the guilt of moving on when others stayed behind. Letting go means creating space, not for the next big thing, but for stillness, for breathing room, for possibility. After her divorce, Teresa didn't know who she was anymore. She kept wearing the same clothes, shopping at the same grocery store, sleeping on the same side of the bed, as if her old life might come back if she just stayed still long enough. One day, she walked into a florist's shop, intending to buy white lilies, his favorite. But her eyes caught the wild sunflowers in the corner. She hesitated, then reached for them. That small moment, choosing a flower for herself, was the first real breath she had taken in years. It wasn't about the flowers. It was about letting go of who she thought she had to become someone she chose to be. Letting go doesn't erase the past. It honors it by setting it free. You don't need to carry every version of you to prove they mattered. Some parts of us are meant to be lived, loved, and released. Not forgotten, but folded into the fabric of who we've become. So if you're standing at the edge, wondering if it's safe to open your hand, know this: the weight you drop is not your worth. The real you was never the burden. It's who's waiting underneath it all, ready to rise. You've made it this far, which means you're already doing the hardest part. You've faced the memories. You've noticed the invisible weight. You've seen how pain lingers and how strength isn't always in holding on, but in having the courage to let go. This isn't a checklist. It's a gentle path. One moment, one breath, one choice at a time. And every time you choose release over resistance, grace over guilt, you come home to yourself. More fully, more freely. You are not what hurt you. You are what you choose to heal. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a whisper, a maybe it's time, I hope you'll stay. There's more where this came from. More stories, more soul. So if you're ready to keep walking this path, subscribe, leave your thoughts below, and come back soon. Your healing isn't just welcome here. It's the reason we're here.